Okay, welcome to Numismatic Portal Symposium. Our session is Coinage of the Crusades by Mike Markowitz. And with that, Mike, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Leonard. Welcome. Between the year 1096 and 1291, and continuing fitfully for almost another 2 centuries, the Church of Rome, the nobles, and the peoples of Western Europe fought a series of military campaigns against the Muslim rulers of the Eastern Mediterranean, or the Middle East, or the Levant, or the Holy Land, if you prefer. It was all about the holy city of Jerusalem, which had been held by the Muslims since they conquered it from the Orthodox Christian Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire way back in the year 638. During its long history, Jerusalem has been attacked 52 times, captured and recaptured 44 times, besieged 23 times, and destroyed twice, once by the Babylonians and once by the Romans. These Europeans created a series of Crusader States that issued coins. These were mostly debased silver. There was some copper small change. There were rare gold pieces that imitated the current circulating Muslim dinars. And today, Crusader coins are mainly found in hoards in Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Turkey. But some of the Crusaders brought their coins back with them when they returned to Europe. And they're really found all over the European and Mediterranean worlds. Here's a rough notion of what Europe looked like in the time of the Crusades. The great city of Constantinople at this time had a population of about 300,000. For comparison, Rome only had about 30,000 people. And I highlighted Genoa and Venice because these 2 Italian maritime powers played a very important role in the Crusades, and they hated each other. Europe at the end of the 11th century, when the Crusades began, was beginning to see the formation of nations that were based on language. But the kings, for the most part, were relatively weak compared to the great barons who actually controlled the land and the serf and employed the knights. Well, what sort of money did these Franks carry to the Holy Land? The circulating coinage of the 11th century consisted of debased silver pennies or denier or denaro or pfennig. There were rare half pennies or obols. There was a small amount of copper token coinage, but not much. These deniers tended to weigh about 1.3 grams, and they were made of billon, a copper alloy, 30 to 40% silver. Some carried the name of a king or an emperor, but local barons and warlords, bishops, abbots of monasteries also issued many of these coins. They had very little purchasing power. A rabbit might cost 5, a chicken 6, and large sums were reckoned in moneys of account, like the livre, which was 240 deniers, or the mark, which was 160. A good war horse might cost you 80 livres, a knight's armor, 40 livres. In contrast, the Muslim world and the Byzantine Empire, through which many of the Crusaders passed on their way to the war, were on the gold standard. The dinars struck by the Fatimid dynasty in Egypt were 95% gold or better and weighed about 4 grams. If you're not used to thinking in metric terms, US nickel weighs exactly 5 grams. The Byzantine hyperpyron, or bezant, as the Franks called it, at the time of the First Crusade, was about 85% gold and weighed 4.4 grams. Silver coinage was scarce in the Muslim and Byzantine economies, but there was an abundant supply of copper small change in the cities, which had largely disappeared in the medieval West. When you see an abundant supply of small change, you're usually talking about a vigorous urban economy where people need to make small purchases every day, like a loaf of bread. Here's some examples of these deniers, the coins the Crusaders might have brought with them. You'll notice that the lettering is extremely crude. The art of rendering a portrait or a detailed image on a coin die had largely died out in the West. And the mint workers who created the dies had only crude skills and crude tools to work with, which is why medieval coins are, to put it frankly, pretty ugly. Here are the states that the Crusaders carved out. The county of Edessa, which was the first one to fall to the Muslims, the Principality of Antioch, the county of Tripoli, and the Kingdom of Jerusalem. A county in this case means a territory that's ruled by a count, just like a principality is ruled by a prince and a kingdom is ruled by a king. Antioch was the first Crusader state to be established. Strongly walled and backed up against a mountain range, the ancient city of Antioch on the Orontes, which is now Antakya, Turkey, was held by a garrison of 16,000 Turks. After a bitter 9-month siege, a tower guard was bribed to let a band of Crusaders scale the wall and open a gate. On the 3rd of June in the year 1098, the Crusaders massacred the Muslim defenders and the Greek Orthodox residents of the city with equal fury. A Norman knight named Bohemond of Taranto, he lived from 1058 to 1111, claimed the city as his own, despite the solemn vow the Crusaders had made to the Byzantine Emperor Alexios that any conquered territory would be returned to the Byzantine Empire. Bohemond founded a dynasty that lasted until Antioch was finally conquered by the Egyptian Mamelukes in 1268, and in exile actually even after that. A Byzantine princess named Anna Komnena, the daughter of the Emperor Alexios, she was packed off to a monastery after she tried to depose her brother. And in her solitude, she wrote a brilliant history, and she left a description of Bohemond. Let me read it to you. Bohemond's appearance was, to put it briefly, unlike that of any other man seen in those days in the Roman world, whether Greek or barbarian. His stature was such that he towered almost a full cubit over the tallest men. He was slender of waist and flanks, with broad shoulders and chest, strong in the arms. In general, he was neither too slim nor heavily built, but of perfect proportions. He had about him a certain charm, but it was somewhat dimmed by the alarm inspired by his person. There was a hard, savage quality to his aspect, owing, I suppose, to his great stature and to his eyes. Even his laugh sounded like a threat to others. Anna was probably about 14 years old, and Bohemond was 42 when they met for the first time, and it seems she was quite smitten with him. The silver coinage of the Principality of Antioch begins with Bohemond III, and it bears an actual picture of a knight with a helmet and a coat of chainmail on the obverse and a cross on the reverse. And these are extremely common. The earliest coinage of Antioch simply copied the designs of the Byzantine copper pholis and was even inscribed in Greek. After storming Antioch and defeating a Muslim army that tried to march from Mosul to relieve it, the Crusaders slowly advanced towards their ultimate goal, Jerusalem. On the 15th of July in the year 1099, using siege towers constructed from the timbers of dismantled Genoese ships that had been dragged all the way up to Jerusalem from the coast, the walls of the city were breached. On the Temple Mount, according to a Frankish chronicler, the slaughter was so great that our men waded in blood up to their ankles. The estimate is that almost 70,000 Muslims and Jews were massacred by the Crusaders in the capture of Jerusalem. A French knight named Godfrey of Bouillon, who led the Franks, refused the title of King of Jerusalem. He said, "No one should wear a crown of earthly glory in the city where our Lord wore a crown of thorns." The only title he would accept was Defender of the Holy Sepulchre, sometimes translated as Protector of the Holy Sepulchre. When Godfrey died the next year, his brother Baldwin, who had established the county of Edessa, had no scruples to accept the title King of Jerusalem, and that was carried by his successors down to the fall of the kingdom in 1291. Except for a unique copper pholis attributed to Baldwin I, the earliest Crusader coinage of Jerusalem is a series of Bilon deniers struck under Baldwin III, beginning in 1143. Baldwin's very extensive coinage is divided into a crudely executed rough series and a later smooth series of finer style and workmanship. The obverse bears the usual short cross, surrounded by the king's name and title, Baldvinus Rex in Latin. And the reverse depicts a kind of crude drawing of the Tower of David, the ancient stone citadel that was built up against the city walls that served as a fortified palace and probably the location of the mint. And the reverse inscription is De Jerusalem, which is continued from the obverse, so King Baldwin of Jerusalem. Remember that there's no J in Latin. In fact, there's no J in any language until the 16th century, really. And so Jerusalem is spelled with I-E-R, etc., or sometimes H-I-E-R. Baldwin's successor, Amalric, or Amalri, changed the design of Jerusalem's coinage, substituting for the Tower of David, drawing or a crude representation of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Amalric was the father of three future rulers of the kingdom: Queen Sibylla, Baldwin IV, known as Baldwin the Leper, and Queen Isabella. Through the 200 years of its existence, the kingdom had one protector, 18 kings, and 5 ruling queens. There was a high turnover. There were also 6 women who were queens consort, queens as wives of kings. And many of them were highly influential in the country's history, having ruled as regents for their minor sons or having a great influence over their spouses. There was high mortality among the men in the Crusader States, and the women often wound up running things. Around the year 1140, Jerusalem began minting imitations of the gold dinars of the Muslim Fatimid Caliphate of Egypt. In Crusader documents, these are called Saracenic bezants. Saracen is the medieval term for Muslim, and bezant is the generic word for a gold coin from Byzantium, the ancient name of Constantinople. The Saracenic bezant was lighter than the equivalent Muslim dinar and inferior in the quality of the gold alloy. The Arabic legend of the coin, which runs in several circles around the rim, were carefully executed on early pieces, and they gradually become more and more blundered over time until they're eventually reduced to just a series of strokes, dots, and circles. Cut gold triangular or rectangular fragments weighing just a fraction of a gram often turn up in Crusader hoards. No complete coins that bear the same designs have ever been found. So numismatists believe that these were made as offering pieces. They were cut up at the mint as soon as they were struck and sold to pilgrims who wanted to make a donation in gold at a holy site or a church, but couldn't afford an entire dinar, which was roughly a month's salary for a foot soldier. The Tower of David and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, much rebuilt over the years, still exist in the city of Jerusalem. Edessa, as we mentioned, far inland from the Syrian coast, is now the town of Sanliurfa in Turkey. It became the seat of a short-lived Crusader county established by Baldwin of Boulogne, who broke away from the main Crusader army to carve out his own territory. After Baldwin went off to become king of Jerusalem, his cousins succeeded him as the counts of Edessa. Edessa mostly struck copper coins called foles. These are crudely struck with a standing figure of the count in armor and abbreviated Greek inscriptions because the population was Greek speaking primarily, like Baldwin, servant of the cross. A few base silver deniers were overstruck on Muslim dirhams. In the year 1144, Edessa fell to a Muslim army. Jocelyn II, the last count, was captured, blinded, and imprisoned in a dungeon at Aleppo until he died in 1159. His coins are extremely rare, but the fall of Edessa led to the unsuccessful Second Crusade, which failed to capture Damascus. The county of Tripoli was established by Bertrand of Toulouse in 1109 on the coast of Lebanon. It became the seat of the longest surviving Crusader state. Bertrand struck some rare deniers, but the coinage of Tripoli took definitive form under Count Raymond II, who ruled from 1137 to 1152, and his son Raymond III from 1152 down to 1187, which is the coin we see here on the left. His name is Latinized as Ramundus, and count is abbreviated as comes in Latin. Tripoli issued an extremely rare Agnus Dei gold bezant with an image in the center circle of the Lamb of God. The inscription is Agnus Dei qui tollis peccata mundi, Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. This coin is so rare that the only picture of one that I could find was from the collection of the American Numismatic Society in New York. This is a coin that comes with an interesting story. It was a coin I was asked to identify some years ago by the owner, who was the daughter of a French archaeologist who had picked it up in the 1930s on the beach at Byblos, the city of Jubail in Lebanon. It's a copper pujoise, right, that was struck by Raymond II or the Third. It has basically the same design as the silver coin. It's about 1 gram. It's worn, it's clipped, and it's strange that such a low valued copper coin would be worth clipping, but somebody obviously thought so. The Crusaders issued a series of imitations of the contemporary Islamic silver dirhams, but they replaced the Muslim religious inscriptions on these coins with Christian inscriptions written out in Arabic. And on some of them, they even put the cross. These coins are rare. They go for like $1,000 to $2,000 at auction when they appear in sales. But by the time that these were being issued, the kingdom, most of the Franks in the Kingdom of Jerusalem were multilingual in Church Latin, medieval French, and Arabic, so that they could communicate with their the population of the kingdom. Saladin, Al-Nasir Salah al-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, known to the Crusaders as Saladin, was of Kurdish ancestry. He was born in 1137 in Tikrit in Iraq, which you may recall was the hometown of Saddam Hussein. Saladin's uncle was a general in the army of one of the Muslim dynasties that ruled the region. And he accompanied his uncle on campaigns. A brilliant military strategist and warrior, he eventually gained control of Egypt, Syria, parts of Arabia, and all the way down to Yemen. In 1187, at the decisive Battle of Hattin, he defeated the combined armies of the Crusader States, recaptured the Holy City, and sparked the Third Crusade. In 1191, at the Battle of Arsuf, which is near Tel Aviv, Saladin's army was defeated by King Richard the Lionheart of England. Strangely enough, Saladin and Richard became best buddies, and they negotiated a friendly peace treaty that allowed Christian pilgrims access to Jerusalem. Saladin died in 1193. At his death, his wealth consisted of 1 gold piece and a small bag of silver dirhams. He had given all the rest away to the poor. Saladin's tomb still exists in Damascus. Richard the Lionheart. He's remembered as one of England's greatest kings, and ironically, he's not really English, he's a Norman. There's some argument over whether he even understood English. Norman French was his native tongue. He had French tastes and a French temperament. He has complete contempt for Englishmen. He finds the country wet and boring. He said he would sell the city of London to anyone who could come up with a few shillings. On his way to the crusade, Richard detoured to the island of Cyprus, where his fiancée had been stranded in a shipwreck. The island was ruled by a Byzantine relative of the emperor in Constantinople, who mistreated his fiancée, and Richard conquered the island, deposed the guy, and took it over. And he issued this very rare copper coin, right? It's not much to look at, but it's literally the only coinage in the name of Richard, because all of his coinage in England was struck in the name of his father, Henry II. Oh, he did issue some rare silver coins in France for his domain there. So as the ruler of Cyprus, he sold it to the Knights Templars. The people of Cyprus didn't want to be ruled by the Knights Templars and revolted. And Cyprus wound up being given to Guy of Lusignan, or Guy, who had been unsuccessful in his bid to become king of Jerusalem. But Guy's descendants ruled the island way down to the middle of the 1400s. We'll talk about that in a little while. Wait, St. Louis. King Louis IX of France was born in 1214 and came to the throne at the age of 12. Honoring a vow that he had made while praying for recovery during a serious illness, he led an ill-fated crusade, the Seventh Crusade in 1249, against the Muslim dynasty that ruled Egypt. He was captured by the Muslims, but he was ransomed for the enormous sum of 2 million livres, right? Or the equivalent of 1 million gold bezants. This was at a time where the annual income of the French crown was only about 250,000 livres. The term "a king's ransom," right, really meant something in the 13th century. Louis's handsome coins had his name written around the central cross on the obverse, Ludovicus Rex, King Louis. The numbering of kings with Roman numerals doesn't become well established until really the 16th or 17th century, right? Which is one of the things that makes medieval coinage extremely confusing, because it can sometimes be hard to say which ruler issued which coin. This is a coin called a gros tournois, or groat, right? Valued at 4 pence, or 4 deniers. Weighs almost exactly 4 grams. It was struck in good silver. Poor Louis in 1270 launched the 8th Crusade against the city of Tunis in North Africa. And he had barely landed on the site when he died of dysentery. The French subsequently erected a cathedral on the site where he is said to have died. He was canonized as a saint in 1297 after his son Philip had pestered the Pope for decades to do it. And the city of St. Louis in Missouri, that was founded by French fur traders in the 18th century, is named in his honor. The Knights of St. John, or the Knights of Rhodes, started its existence as the Order of Knights of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, or the Hospitallers for short. They were founded in 1099 to manage a hospital in Jerusalem that cared for pilgrims, but the order grew immensely rich and expanded its mission to the defense of the Crusader States. Following the loss of Jerusalem, the knights were given the island of Rhodes in the Aegean Sea, which they strongly fortified as a base for operations against the Muslims. In the year 1522, the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent captured Rhodes from the knights, and the knights finally found refuge on the island of Malta, which they held until Napoleon captured it on his way to Egypt in 1798. The knights still exist as a religious and charitable order with their headquarters in Rome. And here's some examples of the coinage of the Knights of Rhodes. The kingdom of Cilician Armenia, which existed as a kingdom from 1198 down to about 1375, produced a vibrant culture that was strongly influenced by interaction with the neighboring Crusader states. Many of the Crusader princes and kings married Armenian women. Armenian women had a reputation for beauty, intelligence, resourcefulness, and toughness, which was as true in the 13th century as it is in the 21st. Wealth that the kingdom derived from trade between East and West led to an extensive royal coinage that included some of the most handsome and popular medieval coins collected today. It's worth noting that on his way to China in 1271, Marco Polo landed at the Armenian seaport of Ayas, which was a major hub on the Silk Road. And here's a few examples of the Cilician coinage of Armenia. When Richard I, King of England, realized that Cyprus would be difficult to rule while he was off crusading in the Holy Land, he sold it to the Knights Templar for 100,000 bezants. When the Cypriots revolted against the Templars, Richard took the island back and gave it to his friend Guy of Lusignan, who had been ousted from his bid to become King of Jerusalem. And the Lusignan family holds the island until the last queen, Caterina, bequeathed it to Venice in 1489. The Kingdom of Cyprus initially issued very pale gold. They're often described as electrum, very, gold with maybe 12 to 10 karat gold, the rest is silver. Cup-shaped coins, like the Byzantine gold hyperpyron, with an image of Christ enthroned on the obverse and a standing figure of the king on the reverse, which is the concave side, with the inscription in Latin. These are very rare, and a memorandum of understanding between the government of Cyprus and the US State Department forbids the importation of Cypriot coins of any period of history that's before modern times into the United States. Here's a rough timeline of the Crusades. And a tagline or two about what happened. And you might ask yourself, when was the last crusade? Well, some historians say it was the Crusade of Varna in the year 1444, when the combined Polish and Hungarian army, led by King Vladislav III, who was simultaneously King of Poland, King of Hungary, and King of Croatia. That army was on its way to relieve Constantinople, besieged by the Turks, was crushed by the Ottomans near the port of Varna in what's now Bulgaria. The king, just 20 years old, was killed in battle. His body was never recovered. Others say it was the 1989 film Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, starring Harrison Ford and Sean Connery. The numismatic prime directive is buy the book before you buy the coin. And the standard reference for the coinage of the Crusades is this weighty tome, Coinage of the Crusades in the Latin East, by D.M. Metcalf, published by Oxford in 1995. It's hard to find, but secondhand copies can be found for about $150 and up. A much more accessible reference, what you might say the red book for Crusader coinage, is Coins of the Crusader States, originally compiled by Alex Molloy. The second edition is still in print for about $85 and extremely useful. It comes with a price guide that is not quite up to date, but probably the most accessible standard reference for this complex and voluminous coinage. A very handy book if you have any interest in medieval coinage at all is Ralph Walker's little softcover booklet, Reading Medieval European Coins, published in 2000. You can pick up a copy for about $24. A magnificent work of scholarship and cartographic graphic design is the Atlas of the Crusades, published in 1991, 192 pages. And I found a copy for secondhand for less than $10. It's a great book. If you like maps, it's a wonderful resource. A surprisingly useful book for understanding the history of this period is the amusingly named Complete Idiot's Guide to the Crusades, published in 2002 and weighing in at 303 pages. This is a book that's written in a conversational tone with a great sense of humor, but generally speaking, the scholarship is pretty solid. Highly recommended. Also highly recommended is the movie Kingdom of Heaven, a Hollywood film starring Orlando Bloom. For a Hollywood film, it's unusually accurate historically. It's worth seeing if you can pick it up. This is my favorite cartoon. It appeared a few years ago in the New Yorker. A group of crusaders riding down from Jerusalem, and one is saying to the other as they look out over an orchard, "Let's face it, it's all about the olive oil." With that, I'll be happy to entertain your questions. Remember, there are no dumb questions.
All right, so if there are any questions, feel free to enter them into the chat, and I will tee them up for Mike. I'll just give it a minute for any questions that might come in.
And I'm going to put in the chat a reference to the article this talk was based on, and to the archive of all my numismatic archives, all my numismatic articles. So that's where all my work is found.
All right, so we've got a few references to his 2018 Coin Week article, and another reference to Academia EDU. Great site, by the way. It's been adding a lot of academic papers on numismatics. And let's see, one comment in the chat said, thank you for a masterful presentation. And Next question is, where might you find these coins for sale?
Um, in the major auctions, there's usually a scattering of Crusader coins. Like most medieval coins, except the ever popular hammered British series, Crusader coins are not widely collected. They're often badly struck and poor metal with blundered or illegible inscriptions, and few have the sort of eye appeal that makes a collector's pulse race. So except for great rarities or examples in superb condition, Crusader coins are shockingly affordable, with nice coppers going for typically under $50. Average bill-on deniers for under 200. The gold Saracenic bezants these days are bringing around 750 to 1,000. So that's the kind of range of prices that you might see in the current market.
And
But
follow-up question: have there been any important auction sales that might perhaps serve as reference catalogs for Crusader coins?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the Belgian dealer Jean Elsen just a month ago had a major auction of Crusader coinage. Elsen.be is the dealer. It's easy to find on the internet, and you can download that catalog as a PDF.
Oh, wonderful.
Um,
All right. Next question: are counterfeit coins common among Crusader coins?
no, not really. And generally speaking, they're not dangerous. The best defense against fakes is to deal only with a reliable dealer who's a member of the Professional Numismatists Guild, the PNG. You can find a list of those dealers on the internet. Don't buy ancient or medieval coins on eBay unless you know exactly what you're doing, because eBay is a dismal swamp of fake coins and overpriced, misdescribed, or generally sketchy dealers.
Any idea why there might be less counterfeits associated with the Crusader coinage?
Not much profit in it for the faker.
Yeah, sure. All right. We'll leave it open another minute or two for any other questions. Yeah, the price points for these seem rather attractive compared to other areas. The idea that you can get a gold Crusader coin, in the $700 range, really seems to me quite remarkable.
Well, they're often pretty low carat gold.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. All right. If there are any other questions out there, just enter them into the Q&A. Listener asks, what again was the name of the Belgian dealer?
Oh, that's let me put it in the chat.
Okay.
Jean Elsen, Elsen.
All right. And again, the website was elsen.be. All right, I have another question. Is there any anywhere that lists a type collection of the Crusader coins?
That's a good question. I'm not aware of one. The American Numismatic Society in New York, right, has a pretty solid collection of medieval coins generally. And their online database, which is called Mantis, right, under medieval coins, if you put in the names of the Crusader States in the search, you can probably turn up a good representative sample. Also, the collection search of the British Museum, the Department of Coins and Medals of the British Museum, right, is the greatest coin museum collection in the world. Many of the coins have been photographed. Most have very precise descriptions and stuff. It takes a bit of practice to learn how to use the British Museum collection search to research coins, but that's a good resource. The source that I use a lot in my own research is procoinarchives.com, which is a subscription database. It's extremely expensive, but the free service of coinarchives.com has like the last 6 months of major auctions that you can access without paying. There's also a European server, AC Search, which has a free service and then additional features that you can pay to access. And many numismatic writers and researchers rely heavily on AC Search.
Yeah. I think the listener may have been referring to some source that, you know, details the major types, major designs of the Crusader coins. Sort of if someone wanted to build a typeset.
The Malloy book, Coins of the Crusader States, would be the starting place.
Okay, sure.
For that.
Yeah, and then the institutional collections, as you noted, are you know, slowly but surely documenting their collections online, and that's becoming more and more of important resource for numismatic research. Yeah, the ANS has digitized a ton of their coins, and those are available. The National Numismatic Collection doing the same thing. So those are becoming important resources. All right, I think that'll wrap it up for the Q&A. Mike, thanks very much for presenting today. Video of this session will be available in approximately 3 weeks via Newman Portal, and we'll wrap it up there. So thanks. Well, wait a minute, we might have one more question here. Malloy and Berman also issued a price guide. I have one from 2007. Are there any updates to that?
No, that's to my knowledge, that's the latest.
Okay. Are you aware of any plans for them to update that, or maybe someone else might come out with their own?
You'd have to ask Alan Berman.
Okay. All right. So I guess the best advice there is, you know, start with that, and then you know, look at the auction prices realized on you know, the various auction prices aggregator sites.
Okay, well, this is Mike Markowitz signing off. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, Mike.